everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com back again with another massive news update. We have some news of strange morale, perhaps some discontent backstage at New Japan Pro Wrestling. Why? We'll find out in just a second. Also, WWE have made a huge announcement regarding NXT UK, and finally as well, a face that we've perhaps not become too used to seeing on regular television recently, unless you count main event, I guess, made a surprise debut on 205 Live. So let's waste no further time, let's get straight into it. This is all of the news. First, let's go to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, where Dave Meltzer has been shedding some light, I guess, according to his sources in Japan, whoever they are. He's been shedding some light on the morale backstage in New Japan Pro Wrestling, because of course, the company has recently undergone a big regime change from the old way of doing things to this new business model headed up by Harold Meij, or May, the Dutchman, Harold Meij. M-E-I-J. Mage. Now, as we've seen fairly recently, the new regime seems pretty intent on expanding New Japan into the West, particularly into the West Coast of the United States. They've held several shows there since the new regime took over, and they seem to be pretty set on rapidly expanding, of course, not just in terms of where their shows are being held, but in terms of their booking decisions as well. Obviously, we now have a Westerner, Kenny Omega, as the top champion, but I think more clearly is the fact that Chris Jericho has been given the Intercontinental title, and then it just sort of waltzed off and not really done much. That to me seems like a pretty blatant step to expanding New Japan into a global brand, and there's obviously positives and negatives for their way of doing that. But at the same time, apparently, one of the major negatives is that it's sort of led to a weird atmosphere backstage, and that is largely down, apparently, to the fact that Harold Meij and his assistant, I guess, the general manager of New Japan, Michael Craven, aren't wrestling guys. Now, according to Meltzer, a lot of wrestlers have felt like factory workers on an assembly line rather than high-level athletes and entertainers, which is obviously what they are. And also, apparently, they found that Craven was kind of talking down to them at certain points and didn't really get the business at all and would make weird comments. Now, obviously, wrestling is a tough business to crack into, and it's not the most welcoming of businesses, I guess, to outsiders, to non-fans. It can be a bit obtuse and a bit strange. And the long and short of all of this is, well, one, morale in New Japan is, as I say, strange, despite being very, very good in recent times due to the high quality of the product. And secondly, apparently, a lot of guys who were maybe considering WWE a little bit, or maybe had WWE on their horizons, are now seriously considering moving to WWE. And even guys who would never have had WWE on their radar are now starting to think that way too. This is all according to Meltzer, but it's very, very interesting. And it all kind of makes sense to me as well. Like, if you at your job, your boss left and a whole new team of management came in and really changed the way of doing things and didn't seem to show as much respect to you, you'd be more tempted to leave as well, of course you would. Secondly, WWE have announced the beginning date for NXT UK, which will be a weekly show on the WWE network. The show will begin next Wednesday and will commence in the evening, British time, which is really good news. No more staying up until 4 a.m. And of course, we will find out the inaugural NXT UK Women's Champion at Evolution, the first ever all-women's WWE pay-per-view, although I don't know either of the competitors involved yet, and even if I did, that would probably be a spoiler. I don't know who they are. And finally, there was a surprising debut on 205 Live for a superstar who maybe hasn't had quite as smooth a path as we may have hoped for him when he first joined WWE from Impact Wrestling. I'm talking about Mike Kanellis, and of course his wife and manager and one of the most charismatic women in my opinion in WWE history, Maria Kanellis, who both debuted on 205 Live, although not in a match. Maria basically distracted my boy Lince Dorado, and then Mike jumps in from behind. And it looks like Lindsay's going to be feuding with the Kanellises now. And I'm really pleased with Mike Kanellis. He's not had the easiest of roads since moving to WWE. And neither has Maria. You know, I think that she was pregnant, and obviously that derailed their careers a little bit, but I'm not saying that they wouldn't have wanted to have a baby, of course not. But it's resulted in us not seeing too much of the Kanellises on regular television. So I think this is a good step. Well, my head says that, but my heart says, don't you dare touch my boy Lince Dorado again, the Kanellises, or you'll be having words with me. I'm sure that's made them quake in their wrestling boots. So that's all for now. Thank you very, very much for watching this video. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. You can follow me on Twitter if you'd like, at Jack the Jobber. You can follow all of us at Cultaholic. Check us out on Patreon if you wish as well, at patreon.com/Cultaholic. And never forget, of course, to hit subscribe and to join us.